That's another one. There's a good one. There's another one just sprung into my mind. I'm sitting in the backyard playing with Jack DeKaiser, who's this famous guitar player who I just happened to move into Whitby, and he lives 2 doors away from me because I see him walking toward. I said, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Coming to visit you." I said, "Why?" He goes, "I live right there." I went, "Ah." So we got 30 people watching us play.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we look up, and we don't. For some reason, we didn't say anything. We just kept playing. There is like a grapefruit-sized ball of fire plummeting through the sky, like. But it wasn't. It was like, but no sound.
Wow.
But it was like on fire with this big plume. I don't know why we didn't say, "Hey, what's that?"
Yeah.
You know. And then it went out of. I expected to hear a big explosion because it was coming. Like who knows what the hell it was. If you've seen the Michael Keaton movie Birdman, have you seen that one?
No.
First of all, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's given me a really good idea for a stage play I want to write. But at the beginning of the movie, for some reason, they show what we saw.
Wow.
I remember watching what I said to my gal. I said, "That's what Jack DeKaiser and I. What I told you, but that's what we saw." You know.
Wow.
And something happened recently when I was with. I'm on the beach in Cabarete because I have a Cabarete in Dominican Republic. I have a school that I sell. I auction off stuff and give them all the money.
Okay.
Like I was telling you about today. And I was down there, and I'm on the beach, and there's a Canadian guy owned one of the places, and I went in. It turns out he went to school with my guitar player's son. Okay. So small world. Now he's got a place on the beach. So we sat down, and he says, "You know, I say hello to everybody that walks by." Graham Sims goes walking by, and this guy says, "Hey, how you doing? Where are you from?" "From Halifax." He said, "Well, this guy's Canadian, so am I. Come on in." So I get talking to Graham. I said, "What do you do?" He says, "Well, I'm a writer. I just wrote a book about Shag Harbor." Well, of course, like the Foo Fighters, I knew exactly what he was talking about. I said, "What are you kidding me? This is great." I said, "That's my whole thing. Is like the Beatles and UFOs." So anyway, I take him to see the next day a place called Castillo Mundo King. And it's in Sosua, which is about 20 minutes from Cabarete. And a friend of mine found it that owned the resort where I stay at. He was out jogging one day. He'd been there for 10 years. Have you ever heard of this place?
No.
You're going to want to Google it. And actually, I gave a big book on it to Stu. He's going to bring it tomorrow. This was built, it's like a 30,000 square foot castle devoted to aliens and UFOs.
Wow.
In one of the rooms, there's like 4 50-foot models made out of iron. I mean, they look like they could be real.
Yeah.
And he's got like these Athanusa names on it, and then there's like hieroglyphics. I remember I had a kid in my place at Canmore when I started working on the new book, and he was looking at it upside down. He goes, "Those are mathematic equations." He says, "I'm a mathematician." He says, He said, "I'm looking at this upside down. These are math equations."
Wow.
So it's a really strange place. And Rolf, who I met, he was getting on in years. German guy, and he told me that the aliens visit him all the time. I said, "What do they look like?" He goes, "Well, I can't see them. I've never seen them, but I can smell them when they're in the room.
Wow.
They have a discernible smell to them, not pleasant."
Yeah.
Right? So I said, "What do they want with us?" He says, "They're going to destroy the planet." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "We're in the way."
Wow.
That's what they told him, telepathically. I said, "How are they going to do this?" He said, he started explaining to me that, he says, their spacecrafts have, it looks like an elephant's trunk coming out of it. And they're going to destroy the planet by combusting the gases, igniting the gases in the clouds to create carbon dioxide. And when you think about it, you know, like, who the hell would think of something like that?
Yeah.
This is what they, but as we know, there's also, you know, according to Paul Hellier, there are also groups of benevolent people that look after us. So I'm sure that whoever these nasty ones are that he knows. Yeah. Anyway, he took me up to the top spire of his castle. He's one little room, like about a third the size of this.
Okay.
And he lives up there. And all I saw was that there was no place to wash. There was no place to cook. He had an open can of salmon, which he'd been eating. And he digs around in this box, and he brings out this, it looked like a marble. It looked, not the little ones we played, but remember you had the big Aggies in it? So it was like amber colored and it was opaque, but you could see something inside of it. And it didn't weigh anything. He put it in my palm of my hand. There was no weight to it at all. He said, "Drop it." Fair enough. I drop it. It bounces over my head.
Wow.
Now, everything we know about physics goes right out the window, because you'd have to get it to go as high as it did, you'd have to throw it and have it be Indian rubber or something to make it do that.
Yeah.
This thing should have gone up like a foot, maybe, or even less, and then dropped. But I caught it, and I went, what is this? He goes, this is what that spacecraft's made of.
Wow.
I believed him. He says, when it's part of the ship, he says the ship changes shape to the point that it's so malleable that they could go through solid objects.
Wow.
So, I mean, he had some strange ideas, this guy.
Yeah.
He also starved himself to death. People were warning him, hey, Rolf, you got to eat. He said, the aliens are looking after my nutritional needs. So I guess there was a certain amount of dementia as well involved, because you know, starving yourself to death is not a good thing. You know? Especially when you're surrounded by, you know, coconut trees and, you know, mangoes and, you know.
Wow.
So anyway, I took Graham to this place, and we got, fortunately my daughter was with me, and her friend spoke Cajun French, which the Haitians do.
Yeah.
So we got the grand tour and found out everything about this place on the last trip. I cut Graham loose, and I go down to Cabaretti Beach, and, you know, it's thousands of people around the beach doing things. But this one guy comes up to me, and he says, do you want to see something unusual? Yeah. Look at it. It's azure blue sky. There's not a cloud in it. And then I spot it, and it's a white, brilliant light right there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, people are coming up and going, what are you guys looking at? UFO, right there. Some of them could see it. Some of them couldn't. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't see it. And then some of them, you know, the people with open minds, even the guys that sell the trinkets on the beach, they were freaking, like, you know, in Spanish, they're screaming, and we watched it for about 3 hours. So Graham missed that one, but I wasn't surprised, because I have a feeling that, like, first of all, why did this guy come up to me out of all the people and say, do you want to see something unusual?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's almost like it's following you around.
Weird, eh?
Yeah.
And I don't mind, you know. I mean.
Yeah. Any sensation that messages, or that you got some mission or anything like that, or is it just these?
I try to be a nice guy. That's my.
Yeah.
You know, I treat everybody like I've known them forever.
Yeah.
Open arms policy with me until, you know, I get screwed and then it's lose my number. But rarely do I have to say that. I mean, I just, you know, my girlfriend says you're too open with people. You know, save some for the mystery of being you. I said, I wrote a whole book about how nuts I am. There's no mystery, you know.
Wow.
I want to embrace people. I want to be friends with people.
Yeah. And how has the UFO thing changed your life? I mean, how, compared to somebody who doesn't have the experiences, how does it change your belief system?
I mean, I meet so many guys like yourselves, you know, that are experts in the field, and I'll say to some of them, have you seen it? No. I think, what a lucky bugger I am. I see them all the time, all over the world, you know.
Yeah.
But and then you see, I mean, I'm sure I could write a UFO book, but I did put this in my new book. It's called Aliens, E.T., Moi. So it's aliens and me, right? Because E.T. is also the French word for and, right? So, so and I wrote all these experiences down. And actually, you guys will now make the book, because I'm going to do an addendum for it based on this weekend's.
Wow,
excellent.
You know? Yeah, we'll have to promote the book. When's it coming out?
When it's finished.
Yeah.
As Michelangelo said to the Pope, when it's done.
Wonderful. Wow.
People keep asking me about when the El Macambo is going to be ready every day, and I said, when it's done.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big job.
And maybe last question. Maybe give me your top experience with some musician that you never thought you'd meet, or top.
Well, I met Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Spent a half an hour with him.
Yeah.
And we talked about everything except the Beatles. I saw his son James was in a room where they built an arcade backstage at the Sky Dome.
Okay.
And I said to him, I said, you know, it's funny, my boy's the same age as yours. And I was going to bring him to it. He goes, oh, that would have been great, man. James would have loved that, you know. I'm thinking, missed opportunity here, you know. I had a cassette of my new album, which actually had a Beatles song cover on it. I didn't tell him I was a musician.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him I had my new album on my back pocket. And we talked about, I said, you know, they play baseball at this place.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been to a baseball game, you know.
Yeah.
And I found a program coming in with him holding his bass up like that. He goes, well, that's me tuning me bass, you know. He was like so Paul McCartney, you know.
Yeah.
And a lesson to be learned. One of the biggest stars ever in the history of the world. he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Such a diplomat, you know, that I wasn't nervous at all. I mean, it was like talking to you, you know, or a cousin or something. He's such a part of your life that you go, oh, it's Paul, hey man, how's it going, you know?
Yeah.
So we left there, and I went outside and I ran into a friend who was a scalper. And he says, Christ, you look like you just ate the canary. I said, I just spent a half an hour with Paul.
Yeah.
He said, what tickets you got? I said, oh, we're in the nosebleeds. He says, here, take these. It's a gift. So we go in, and we're sitting in the second row from here to the wall, and Paul McCartney's where that lamp is. Wow. So the lights go up, and Paul looks at me, he goes, hey, Greg, like this. And I started crying like a little girl. I was just like, I said, he knows who I am. He knows who I am. I'm crying, I'm like weeping, big tears, and like I was so happy, you know?
Yeah, after your...
Especially, I mean, the fact that there's 60,000 people, and he's signaling me out and says my name.
Yeah,
you know?
It's been your whole life, the Beatles.
But I didn't tell him that I was the guy that jumped on the back of the paddy wagon when it left the King Eddie Hotel, because I was.
Yeah.
And it's funny, years later I saw a Beatles documentary on CBC after a gig one night, Beatles in Toronto. And I'm watching it, and all of a sudden, there I am, as a 13-year-old. Wow. I remember getting off the escalator, turning the corner, and there was one of those big searchlight like that they would have used for lighting back then, and I'm standing there like this. And the guy goes, keep moving, kid. And then, like a goofy little kid looking around and then walking away. And I went, that's me at the Beatles concert, you know? Wow. So.
Amazing life you've had.
Yeah, it has been, you know? I mean, fortunately, it's not over. I mean, I'm 67 now, and I still think exactly like I did when I started playing music. The only thing that's different now is I see a picture of me and I go, Christ, when did my dad start playing, dressing like me and playing? Because I look exactly like my dad, you know?
Yeah. And you've toured all around the world? You've been mostly...
Not really toured, but I've traveled a lot. You know, I mean, Egypt and, you know, places like Greece and all that. Yeah. But I went on, I wanted to be an archaeologist first. Yeah. That was my first, I knew I was going to be an ologist of something. I didn't think it would be a UFOologist or a musicologist, but I knew I wanted to be a paleontologist or an anthropologist. That's, you know, I was going to like finding digs when I was a kid, you know, going, hanging out with the archaeologists, and they'd let me brush things off. So when I made my first really good money from one of our records that was top 10, I took all the money and I went to England for a week, then I went to Egypt for a week, went to Greece for a week, went to Italy for a week, and saw all the archaeological things that I've always wanted to see, the Colosseum, pyramids, you know, all that. So I went around and saw all the stuff. Wow. So yeah, and you know, it's still happening. I mean, I don't think the interaction with whatever sort of interaction I'm having with these other beings, I don't think that's going to stop. In fact, I've made inroads to somebody here that has, apparently gets together and parties with these things. And I said, can I go? And he, yeah, and
it'll help when you get the regression. Then it sort of opens up what the actual contact is.
I want to go back to seeing that guy's face, because I can't recall what it looked like. I don't, like I said, I don't recall any discernible accent. I don't recall any robotic movement. You know, I didn't really look at him until I saw his hand, and then when I looked right at his face, but passing out instantly. You know, I mean, that's weird.
Wow.
Because I was excited, you know, I was talking about UFOs, and I had a guy who asked me about them, so yeah, let's go here, you know. But I mean, think about that. This is a complete stranger, and the first words out of his mouth is, do you know what a Foo Fighter is?
Wow.
My friend John Gibb, he was a boyhood friend of Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page. He actually has footage of playing at Battersea Amusement Park where John looks very much like thin white Duke era David Bowie. And the guy right next to him playing a homemade Telecaster is Jeff Beck. And he's got a single that band recorded, and you can tell that it's a 16, 17-year-old Jeff Beck. You can just hear it. And then the other single he's got is Jimmy Page playing with him. So his daughter, who I've known since she was in diapers, she married Pat Smear. Oh, wow. So that's how we know. It's funny because we went, Pat and Rebecca came with John and I to see Queen when Paul Rogers was singing with them. And afterwards, and we're not jaded, but you know, like John and I, we've met everybody and done everything. So Pat says, "You want to come back and meet the guys in Queen?" And now we're going to the pub and have a drink, you know. So we didn't go back to meet them.
Well, doesn't Queen, the head guy from Queen, have some? He's an astrophysicist.
Oh, we have Brian May, yes. Yeah. Like a PhD astrophysicist.
Yeah, maybe have an interest. And the Foo Fighter drummer, right, has the,
Well, I was
he's
going
come
to say,
forward.
and
Well, Dave Grohl. Well, where do you think he got the name for the band?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when I meet him, I'm going to tell him my stories.
yeah.
Because, you
Yeah,
know.
that's why I was wondering whether you had talked to others, because there's so many of them that have stories, like the Foo Fighter drummer and Grohl and Ace Frehley, and you get all these, and I was just wondering whether you'd run into these musicians where they say, oh yeah, I've had experience
Well, I
too," or
met
something like
most
that.
of I mean, you know, I played the first 2 KISS concerts in Toronto at the
Oh,
Victory
that's
Burlesque.
all right.
And then we did the next night at Queen's University or something with him.
Oh.
And, but you know, it's not something that's going to come up in casual conversation.
Yeah.
Even though Ace played the spaceman in the band.
Yeah, well, once you read my book, then you'll know these
Yeah.
guys and say, hey, I read you had this story.
Yeah, well, I already started glossing through it and looking at it and going, like I saw Bon Jovi had a UFO in Peru over top of them, and
Yeah.
you know, and then of course Jimi Hendrix, because Eddie Kramer's a friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie Kramer, he engineered every Jimi Hendrix album. He's currently living in Toronto designing Electric Lady North at the Alma Combo. And recently, as a favor to me, he told me, I said, you didn't like me when you first met me. He goes, no, not at all. My wife said, you should pay attention to this guy because he's never going to lie to you and he's an honest, good man.
Yeah.
And then Eddie and I became best friends.
Wow.
And now he remixed my first album from 1977. So I'm still sitting, I mean, like we're friends now. But I still sit there going, dear Lord, he did Woodstock. He did Frampton Comes Alive. He did Low Spark of High Heel Boys for Traffic. He did Duran Duran. He did the Beatles' Baby You're a Rich Man. He did the Stones' Beggar's Banquet. He did everything Hendrix ever did.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And he's working on my music
Wow.
and making it sound good for a change. You know?
Anything else?
So anyway, he said, if anybody brings up Jimmy, you know, let me know. You know, I saw your reference to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Jimmy in the book, so I'm going to show it.
Yeah,
to you.
there's actually a book written about Jimmy. What was the guy's name? The guy that he was on one of his albums. Can't remember the guy's name, but they actually wrote a book about Jimi Hendrix and his experiences.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well,
Yeah.
when they were at the place doing the Rainbow Bridge one in
Oh, yeah.
Hawaii,
Yeah.
UFOs came over the stage, and he went, "Oh, there's my pals,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I said, Eddie laughs at me.
Yeah.
He says, "Tell us those stories again," you know. And he's
Yeah.
laughing at me. I said, "Excuse me, aren't you the guy that recorded Up from the Skies?"
Yeah.
You know, we're at the beginning, we're there. Talked to an interesting man named Paul Caruso, and he goes, "Thank you. As you all know, you can't believe everything you see and hear, can you? Now, if you'll excuse me, I must be on my way." And then it's all psychedelic guitar sounds, and then it goes into a song about aliens.
Wow.
So I said, "Aren't you the guy that recorded that? You worked with one of the biggest advocates of alien life ever,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So don't fault me don't say I'm crazy. I mean, you worked with another guy who was crazy.
Yeah.
I'll certainly put a bug in Grohl's. I'm dying to meet him because he looks like a really nice person.
Yeah.
And I found out from John, he says he's just exactly what he appears to be.
Yeah.
He's thankful that he's that big that he can hang out with Paul McCartney and play music with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I would be. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I play with a lot of famous people, but, you know, like, I think, those kind of people gravitate to each other because we don't give a shit about each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
You appreciate their talent, but it's
Yeah.
like, you know, the guy coming in from the Beatles into my house,
Yeah.
you know, the reason we became friends is because we didn't make a big fuss about him. He ended up falling asleep on my couch.
Yeah.
You know.
And what about musicians? Like, is there a truth to the fact that musicians really don't give a shit about anything? Like, they want to be the bad boys, so they're not really afraid to talk about it.
Well, I
Like,
was
come
the
out,
bad
like,
boy.
Yeah, you're not afraid to come out and talk about UFOs. Who cares? I mean, I don't care about anything.
Fearless.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you read my book, I mean, I was called the bad boy of Canadian, the enfant terrible of Canadian rock.
Wow.
Because I didn't give a shit what anybody said. Record company. I wrote a song called "Sign on the Line."
Yeah.
And it was a scathing diatribe about how unjust the record companies are to guys like me.
Wow.
And what I do, I signed it and I sent it to Tim Harold, who was the president of Polygram Records. And it said, "Dear Tim," and then this horrible song lyric about, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a victim of corporate rule and the new policy, and like just, you know, you can't deal with record jives, I call them, instead of executives. And we got thrown off the label the next day.
Is that right?
But I didn't care, you
Yeah,
know. I mean,
yeah.
at least, and that's why all of a sudden
You're
now they
thinking,
start referring to you, you know, with the L word and everything. And I go, yeah, I suppose, like, I never censored myself with radio interviews or television. It was just stream of consciousness.
That's the way it should be.
The way you talk
Yeah.
in front. I mean,
Yeah.
how you remember all that stuff, and it's just rapid fire delivery was very impressive.
Yeah.
But you know, then again, I'm sitting here basically doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
It's
we
your
know
expertise.
we know our subject,
Yeah,
right?
you know your subject.
Yeah.
Well, let's maybe talk again once you've had your ability to look at all the things and you sort of interact.
Yeah.
Because you run against these guys all the time.
You got a new friend here.
You bet.
You know, and you too.
I'm honored to have the thing. And she worked for a record company. You work for a record distributor, so you know this whole thing about people getting ripped off.
Handelman?
No, I work a retail store in Canada.
What was it?
You know, it was CD Plus, Music City,
Dave
Record. Oh yeah,
It's one of my best friends.
Oh, he might remember me.